Hi, I'm James Peck, Curator of Collections here at the Rockwell Museum of Western Art in Corning, and I'm here today for the third of a four-part series of Curator's Choice. And today's Curator's Choice is Walter Ufer's Along the Rio Grande, which is a painting he did in 1920. Walter Ufer was born in Germany and moved to Louisville, Kentucky at an early age. As a teenager, he apprenticed to a lithographer in Louisville, and then in his later teens moved on to Germany, to Dresden, Germany, to practice at the art academies in Dresden. When he came back, he was a practicing artist and a teacher, and he was recognized almost immediately by several cultured Chicago businessmen who decided to send Ufer and other like-minded artists to Taos, New Mexico, which at the time was a real clearinghouse for artists who were trying to create a new style of art in America. It was a very exciting time. It was believed that being close to the Native Americans in Taos would enable a new and better style of American art to emerge. So in 1917, he gets to Taos. At the same time, he's winning a lot of prizes. He's winning prizes for big paintings like Land of Manana and Going East, which are submitted to juried competitions in Washington, D.C., in New York City, and he's gaining a lot of prominence. So from about 1917 to 1920, he has a real productive spurt of paintings that he makes in Taos, travels around the country. Unfortunately, Walter Ufer suffered from alcoholism, so the 1920s and early 1930s were a period of a sort of decline for him, and he died in 1936 in Taos, New Mexico, but his reputation was secure. So the painting we see here, which is Along the Rio Grande, Ufer uses his friend and frequent model, who's Jim Mirabal right here, and what he's able to do is he's able to put Jim in contemporary dress, and this was actually a big deal for 1920. Most people who were painting Taos Pueblo Indians in the Taos, New Mexico area were painting them in traditional dress, and they were painting them sort of in the past. But Ufer said, no, that's not what I do. I paint the Indian as I see him, fishing, looking for wood, hunting, things like that. And what that does is it sort of reminds viewers that the Indian is a living, vibrant member of the community with a long, lively past, and not some sort of sacred thing to be looked at as an object of veneration, right? And so what Ufer does in this painting specifically, you can see that Jim is wearing a bright red shirt, which is the very center of the composition. He's surrounded by these the yellow bank and the blue of the Rio Grande River, right? And so those are a nice contrast. The blue tends to draw our eye into the painting, and the brighter colors here tend to push back. So there's a nice push-pull effect. Jim is the very center. His head is almost at the very center of the composition, and the red of the shirt may actually predict the fate of the poor fish that he's going to pull up, which he will eventually probably gut and have for dinner that night. So it's an interesting little trick that he does there with the fishing. So what's really interesting about this painting too is that Walter Ufer was trained in academies in Europe, right? So the academic tradition is one that teaches people how to paint and draw very precisely, how to render the human body, how to model from dark to light. In other words, how to make things look realistic and three-dimensional. But what he does here is kind of interesting because he sort of flattens out the canvas. The colors here are give you a little bit of push-pull, and yet the way he paints, the brush strokes are very flat, and the stark contrast of light and cooler colors actually makes it look a little bit more modern. What Walter Ufer is able to do here very convincingly is kind of straddle the line between old school traditional academic art and something that's a bit more modern that was coming out in the 19-teens and 1920s in America. And this was his attempt at sort of bridging the gap between traditional art and the more modern tendencies that were coming out in American art at the time. Thank you very much. I hope you'll come to the Rockwell Museum of Western Art and check out this great painting. It's up all summer, and I'll see you in September.